So what you're looking for is people who can protect those returns and beat off the competition. We're looking for these companies with these wonderful returns on capital, 29%, good. The trouble is there's a law of economics called mean reversion. And if you've got a 29% return on capital, the competition should turn up and try and take that off you. People should see that, analyze that within any industry sector and say, I'm getting into that sector. That's a great sector to be in. And they do. So what you're looking for is people who can protect those returns and beat off the competition. I don't particularly like this term, but it's one that Mr. Buffett has popularized. They need a moat. He says it's like imagining that your wonderful business is your castle. You need a moat to be able to defend your castle. What's the thing that you've got that enables you to do decade after decade producing returns which should be taken away by competition? And it's usually one or more of the following. What brands? We will pay more for branded goods than non-branded goods. We pay more for primary brands than we do for secondary brands than we do for tertiary brands. Brands are something unlike patents, where if you spend money on renewing the brand and advertising and marketing brand, they can last forever. Control of distribution and supply chain. It's not just brands, sometimes it's these elements as well. The example I always cite is the dairy companies like Nestlé and Danone in the developing world, where if you go to someone like Pakistan or India, there was no dairy industry as we understand it there before these people arrived. They went to dairy farmers, convinced the dairy farmers to become dairy farmers, gave them help with veterinary care and feed to develop a dairy herd, set up the refrigerated transport system to get the milk from the farms to the processing plants, set up the processing plants to make UHT, homogenized, spray-dried dairy products, and put the fridges in the shops at the end. If you turn up to compete with them, you can't use all that stuff. You can't go and put your things in the fridge or use their supply chain. You have to build it all from scratch. Now, it's not impossible, but it's darn difficult. And if you combine that with their brand, which usually speaks safety, particularly to consumers in the developing world, they're putting their product quite often into the most precious thing in their life, their child. That safety in that Nestlé brand, combined with their stranglehold on supply chain and distribution, is a killer moat, basically. Sometimes it's an installed base of equipment or software. I touched upon elevators and escalators. It's a great business. The money isn't primarily made from selling elevators and escalators. It's made from the service, spares, and so on. It's a legal requirement to have them serviced. You can't opt out from having them serviced. They break down. They have to be serviced. Sometimes the installed base is software. We said we touched various things coming over here today. The airline used reservation software. Basically, once that software is installed, you don't change very often because it's low cost. It's a very small ticket. €4 per passenger, typical from Amadeus charge for processing a passenger, for doing the reservation, the boarding pass, and the weight and balance calculation for the aircraft is done by them for €4 a passenger, basically. Once you've installed their system, you're reluctant to change. It's a barrier to new competition coming in. And with the installed base of equipment like elevators and escalators, if you buy a Kone or an Otis or a Schindler elevator, there's a 75% chance you will sign a contract to maintain it with the original equipment manufacturer. They've got you as a tame client. And patents. Patents obviously guard against competition. They're our least liked form of moat for a simple reason: they expire. They are limited life. We like things that can go on forever, seemingly. We like companies that are resilient to change, particularly technological innovation. We all hear about technology and we're told we're living in the most disruptive, technologically, rapidly advancing period in history. I'm not convinced that's true, by the way. What I do know is, as much as it may change our lives, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, it's difficult to make money with things that are changing rapidly technologically. This is the top 10 software companies in the world in 1984. Okay? They were taken from a business plan from a company called Intuit, which was founded in 1984, which we own. It's an accounting and tax software company based in America. This was their analysis of the top 10 software companies in the world in 1984. So there you are, you're in 1984, you think, I'm wrong, you're gonna go and make a technology investment or three. So you get up this list of the top 10 software companies in the world and you pick a couple. Unless you pick that one, I'm afraid you're in a bit of trouble because the other 9 have ceased to exist. They're just not there anymore. And these were real businesses. I used, and probably some of you did if you're old enough, Lotus Notes before I used Word. I used VisiCalc from VisiCorp as the forerunner of Excel. These were companies with real products. They've been vaporized, don't exist anymore. Another area that's highly regarded from a technological innovation standpoint, attracts lots of investors, is the drug industry, the biotechnology industry. Investing in biotechnology is an interesting approach in terms of the odds of success. Most drugs in most regimes have to go through 4 stages of clinical testing These are the 4 stages, and these are the failure rates, okay? Test number 1 is it safe? 97% of drug compounds fail that first test. Only 3% make it through the is it safe. 97% of them have some side effects. Of the 3% that survive that, are put into stage 2, does it work? Does it actually do anything? Once they get to the point where they give you the drug and the placebo, if you're the same, it doesn't do anything. Of that 3%, 95% of them fail that one. Of the 3% that failed, that succeeded and got through the 5% there, test number 3 is, yeah, okay, so it does something, it doesn't kill you. Is it better than an existing compound out there that's already got a patent? Because if it isn't, you're not going to get a patent. 88% don't survive that test. And then finally, the final test is usually, does it have any other benefits or uses? So it may be a diabetes drug, but can you label it for obesity, for example? That's the final test, which is the one that most survive. If you analyze that, the likelihood of getting a drug up here, so you're one company, you're one drug biotechnology company you're thinking of investing in, you have a 1 in 10,000 chance of being right. You get one FDA-approved drug. It's a really bad industry from an investment standpoint. We like companies that operate in particular sectors, so ones that have got intangible advantages like brands, control of distribution, they've got installed bases. So we're looking for intangible advantages. We don't like companies that rely on tangible advantages like buildings, things like that, because you can always replicate buildings with money. Franchisors we like, I didn't touch upon that earlier. Given that our number 1 requirement is a high return on capital, nothing much beats companies that use other people's capital. Just some examples. We don't own all of these. Mostly the companies that we invest in are companies that you've heard of, maybe 1 or 2 you haven't, but I'm sure you've heard of Procter & Gamble, the world's biggest fast-moving consumer goods company. I'm sure you've heard of Nestlé, biggest food and beverage company. You might not have heard of Becton Dickinson. Next time you're at the doctor's and you're having an injection or you're having a blood sample taken, and their biggest selling product is a disposable syringe. They sell a packet of 100 for £10, so it's 10 pence per syringe. No doctor thinks twice about 10 pence when they give you an injection. And it has a unique feature, which is the plunger can't be pressed twice. It locks once it's done, so it prevents needle sharing. Colgate-Palmolive, you touched upon the fact that people often say to me, you try to find winners. I say, no, I like to bet on people who've already won. I'm that person who goes to the races and wants to know the result before I'll put a bet on. I know that Colgate has won. Colgate's got over 50% of the world toothpaste market, 35% of the toothbrush market. It's number 1 in liquid soap, and it's number 3 in pet food. It won. I said I like resilience. My poster child for resilience is this company here, Brown-Forman, which you may not be familiar with. It's the distiller of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. That's its number 1 product. And Brown-Forman survived not only 2 world wars and the Great Depression, they survived Prohibition, which is kind of interesting. So their product was declared illegal in their home market. They survived. They got a license from the US government to dispense whiskey for medicinal purposes.